Welcome to an armchair journey of France at its best. We're going to take a look at some of the highlights of France and some of the things that we think are must see when you plan your visit to that country. It is one of the most popular countries because there's a wide variety of things to see, do, and a lot of history to go and experience. So, Larry, would you like to take us on a journey today and tell us some of these highlights?
I'd be delighted to, Paula. So let's just get started here and we'll quickly run through a sneak preview of, as you say, one of the most wonderful countries in the world. Obviously, this is Please Go Away Vacations that is acting as your host. We're proud to say that we're celebrating 55 years this year, and we've had the opportunity to be in France many times with groups and both as well as being individual. Today, our sneak preview is actually going to be taking a overview of France clear from the north, clear to the south of France. That's literally from the English Channel down to the Mediterranean Sea. And so it's an in depth experience that we're about to take off on, but it's going to be rather short and quick to the point. Again, a sneak preview of one of the most popular countries and most historic countries in the world. Obviously, the highlight of any skyline of Paris in one's mind is the Eiffel Tower. Originally constructed as a temporary structure for one of the world's fairs, it was scheduled to be torn down, but the architect Eiffel uh, convinced the people to let it stay up, and it has become a worldwide recognized landmark. And of course, one of the most enjoyable ways to get an overview of this wonderful city is a Paris Sunset Sand River cruise. All of your major buildings, or many of your major buildings, are situated right along the river, and you get a quick overview and a feel for what you're about to experience in the next few days as you spend time in Paris and then in other parts of France. The Arc de Triomphe is obviously another of the most famous structures of Paris. It's at one end of the most famous avenue in the world. It was constructed by Napoleon, started in 1806 in commemoration of some of his victories against the combatants of France at the time. It was not completed until 1836, and as I mentioned, it is the focal point and pillar point of one of the most famous avenues in the world. And that famous avenue is Champs Elysees. An avenue, by definition, is a major street, wide in width, lined generally by trees. And you can see on the far end in the distance there that Arc de Triomphe, which we referred to originally. Another structure that is famous for the skyline of Paris, and which one that became very well covered in the news over the last several years, is Notre Dame Cathedral. Obviously, you see it here as it's being refurbished and is being rebuilt after the devastating fire that it did have. It's situated right on the Seine River, as we referred to, and you can see here in the foreground the famous flying buttresses, which are used to support the ceiling that is going to be replaced as a result of the fire. Place de la Concorde is on the opposite end of the Champs-Élysées, and it is the largest public square in all of Paris. And the fountain that you see here is an almost identical duplicate to the ones that are present in St. Peter's Square in Rome, but it is the known as the Middle Ages capital or the Gothic cathedral capital of the area, and it's a major public square, public capital. Interestingly, as far as history goes for France and the Place de la Concorde, it's the site of public executions. We've heard of Marie Antoinette being beheaded, King Louis the XVI, and many of the other events of the French Revolution. Another square of major importance in Paris is Place Vendôme. The pillar in the foreground is actually made from captured cannons, again, in commemoration of the victories of Napoleon. And it is probably known for its major hotels that surround the Place Vendôme. But that pillar there, as I mentioned, was constructed out of the cannons that were captured at the Battle of Austerlitz. And of course, one could not go to Paris without experiencing this next structure, and that's the Louvre Museum. And pictured in the foreground is the famous I Am Pi pyramid entrance. The Louvre is the museum that has the largest number of artworks in the entire world, and it's worth going to. And of course, one of the major things that you go to view when you go to the Louvre Museum is surprisingly small in size. As you can see here, it's not those big pictures on the back of the wall that we are wanting to review, but it's that small picture in against that white backdrop, and that's the famous Mona Lisa. It is very small, but its reputation far exceeds and has made it probably one of the most artistic and popular works of art in the entire world. Another thing that you can do when you go to Paris, and we quite frankly recommend that you do it, and we always add it as a feature on we whenever we have a tour of our own there, and that's to take in one of the cabaret style performances that are normally done late at night. One of the most popular and the oldest one in all of Paris is Paradis Latine, and you go have a nice meal, and then you have an abundance of entertainment and things of this nature going on. It is cabaret at its finest, and it is, of course, Paris. As I mentioned, you have cabaret, food, and follies. You'll see some bare breasts, so if you're offended by that type of thing, you probably don't want to go, but it is nevertheless what Paris is about, and it's done with taste. It's not vulgar in any sense of the word. It's very artistically performed. And of course, one could not go to France, we don't think, unless you had the opportunity to experience the beaches of Normandy. Now, this is up on the English Channel, and we all are remembering that this was the greatest invasion that ever took place in the world. It was consisting of those major different beaches: Utah, Omaha, Gold, Juno, and Sword. The invasion was comprised of the British, the Canadians, and of course the Americans that landed on both Utah Beach and Omaha Beach. When you're in this area, you're going to have the opportunity to go to several museums. One of the best that we would recommend is the Memorial Peace Museum at Cannes. And you can see here the revolver that has its barrel twisted so that it is unable to be fired in commemoration of its name, a Memorial Peace Museum, all in the area of the Normandy invasion. Also, still present are some of the remnants of the actual invasion that took place in that invasion of many years ago. And these are the Mulberry Port artificial harbors. You know, getting ashore in with the human beings being sacrificed as they invaded the shore was a miraculous feat and took so much courage. But then once the soldiers got ashore, they had to be supplied. And how could you bring the tanks and the ammunition and the food stuff and things like that ashore? Well, artificial ports were created. You see the remnants here, but in this next slide, you'll see an old picture of how those were actually used to transport from the sea vessels to the shores and beaches of Normandy all of the transport that needed to be brought there. If you like history, this is what you see at the beaches of Normandy. Also, at the beaches of Normandy, it's somewhat sobering because the Omaha Beach Cemetery is another place that one should visit in our recommendation. And although they're somewhat small, you can see the lattice work of white crosses and white gravestones situated there among the green grasses. It is one of the most well kept cemeteries anywhere in the world and is a commemoration to the sacrifices of human life that took place during that invasion. The Normandy American Cemetery is likewise a place of great nostalgia and time for reflection, again, reflecting on the lives that were lost during that invasion. It's the entire area is filled with commemorative aspects of that uh, invasion of a number of years ago. Continuing on, we are looking at one of the most difficult areas of invasion. This is the Point de Houx, and we all hear about the soldiers that had to climb up ladders, rope ladders, 100-foot high cliffs. Once they got ashore, then they had to climb on top of that 100-foot high point, and the American soldiers accomplished that feat. And once they got on top, they were able to be taking on combat activities with things that we will see here in the next slide. And you can see that this was a commemoration point to the Rangers that did this under the leadership of the gentleman that is named there. And you can see this is on top looking down the 100 feet. So you see this when you're on top. Of course, what was meeting and greeting the invaders at the time when they got on top were scenes like we're going to see in the next few slides. This is a German bunker, the backside. You can see the sea to the far side or in the far distance. This is the rear entrance to the bunker, and it was from this bunker that the Germans could just literally massacre the invading forces. It is reinforced concrete of great strength that you can see here, and also then the front is even more imposing because this is what the invaders had to face. Those big guns, and this was the type of structure that was on top of Point de Houx. Now, when you visit this area, you can actually go inside and have the same view that the Germans did when they awoke and saw the invading ships on the horizon. And then, of course, in addition to the invaders that were coming ashore, there were also paratroopers that were being flown in behind the lines of combat. And one of the most famous points historically of that paratroop invasion is the village of St. Mere Iglesia. And this is a church that is there. And this next slide will show a circle of something that I want you to look at, and that's that piece of white structure that is there at the top of that, because this next slide will show what that is, and this actually happened. That is an American paratrooper, commemorated here, obviously, with a dummy, but the gentleman caught his parachute on one of the spires of the church and was there for 18 hours while the battle went on below him. He played dead. He was shot, injured, but not killed. He survived and didn't die until just a few years ago. But this is the type of history that you have in the town and village of St. Mere Iglesia. Also, in commemoration of the paratroopers and the airborne activity that took place, also in the same village, you'll find this airborne museum. And if you will look at those two structures, they are constructed to resemble a parachute. They are worth visiting. They commemorate the activities and the invasion forces. They have some actual life-size dioramas in there showing what and how the invasion took place. Moving on, and still in the land of Normandy, but moving beyond the beaches of Normandy, we come to the Bayeux Cathedral. This is Norman architecture at its best. It was actually consecrated in 1077, if you can imagine that, on the 14th of July in 1077. The Bishop Odo de Canterville was the one in charge, but his illustrious brother, who we know as William the Conqueror, was also in attendance. So if you like history, this is the type of history that you can see when you are in France. And then, of course, the other areas that you're going to be visiting along the um, English Channel in that area is the town and village of St. Malo, and it is famous for its beaches. And if you have the opportunity to overnight there in St. Malo, we would recommend that you get a room that has the opportunity to look over the beaches because they are really unusual and unlike anything else in the rest of the world. Here's an example of the beaches. You can see how they are rather small in comparison to maybe what we think of, but nevertheless, the activity of the beaches, the beauty of the beaches, and the water activity of pulsating waves adds to the drama of the area. Continuing on, also in the same area, is uh, Le Mont Saint Michel, a Mount Saint Michel. This is a medieval monastery that is on top of this small island, and it is just that because when the tide comes in, it is completely surrounded by water and was originally built there as somewhat being protected from invading forces. It's one of the most iconic attractions in all of the area, and this right here is recognized as a UNESCO World Heritage Site. Moving now toward the center of the country of France, away from the beaches of Normandy and further inland, we come to the Loire Valley. And this is an area that is uh, filled with chateaus, with castles, if you please, with gardens and with vineyards. It's rolling territory, very beautiful, very relaxed. It has meandering rivers through it, very beautiful. And you do want to, I would suggest, visit this area when you have the opportunity to go to France, the Loire Valley. The wines of the valley are well known worldwide, and if you're so inclined, we would certainly recommend that you have a wine tasting opportunity in the valley so that you can say that you did have that opportunity. One of the experiences that you can add when you visit. And I mentioned the various chateaus. Now, we have groups when we go stay at this particular chateau, and it is reconstructed, or I should not say reconstructed, but maintained in the way that it was many centuries ago. But the food and the dining is also included when we stay there. So if you have that opportunity, we would recommend this be something that you consider doing. The Chateau de Beauvoir, and part of the dining room here that you see that is where our groups, when we have this included as a feature bonus, dine when they have that opportunity. Another chateau that is famous is the Chateau de Chenonceau, and it has been used for many different purposes. During the Second World War, it was used as an Allied hospital, and it is again just part of the gardens. You can see them in the background there. Some of the tranquil scenery that you have in the Loire Valley. On to Lyon, when you have the opportunity, that's a city that is known as the food capital of Paris, and is filled with the different types of French cuisine. I've always enjoyed the various opportunities of French cuisine, and you can see right here in the foreground the French onion soup. So it's stuff that we are used to. It's not anything that is going to offend your palate, but I think it would be a most enjoyable opportunity to enjoy some of the tastes of the city of Lyon when you are there. Avignon is another famous city, and famous because between 1309 and 1377, the Catholic popes actually resided here as opposed to Rome. and it is an ancient city. It has winding streets, and you can see the overview here. And the major structure in all of the town, which you can tour if you so are so inclined, is, as we will see here on this next slide, the Palace of the Popes, the Palace of the Palais des Papes in Avignon, but Palace of the Popes is what that's saying, and that's where they actually resided during that time they were away from Rome. Another famous area that one wants to examine is Point Saint Benezet at Avignon. Now, this is what is remaining of one of the most famous bridges that connected France with Spain. And of course, it was a very important trade route, and it also was a means of transport for the popes as they resided there. Also, moving on, then you go to the area of Grasse, if you like, Grasse, and this is where the perfumes are made. Actually, they look somewhat like a distillery because they have all kinds of means of making the perfume. They will give samples out, and of course, if you like to buy, you can do that. But French perfumes are known worldwide, and the center of French perfumery is here in Grasse. So now we are on the southern part of France. We are at Nice, and the water you see here is from the Mediterranean Sea. The beaches of Nice are much larger than some of the other areas. There is a very distinct difference with these beaches, however, in that there is no sand. There are small, rounded rocks that constitute the beaches, very easy to walk on, but certainly nothing like what one is accustomed to and refers to as a sandy beach. Nice is a beautiful city, and when you're there, you certainly will want to take the opportunity to visit the flower market. It is beautiful. You walk through there, you don't have to buy anything, but it's just a marvelous way to become involved in the beauty of the area, and it's only about a block off the beach that I showed you in the preceding picture. And in the area of the Mediterranean, too, the Principality of Monaco is something that is worth seeing if you have the opportunity to do that. It is a very wealthy area. It is where Prince Rainier and Princess Grace resided, and you can see that the principality, a major portion of the buildings of the principality are actually constructed on that high point. And when you're there, if you have the opportunity, you'll want to go to the very top, because when you are there, you will be able to see structures such as we're going to see in the next several slides. The Casino of Monte Carlo, world famous, and you're probably not going to want to go into it. You probably won't be dressed for it. It's very formal, but nevertheless, you can say you've been on the grounds of the Casino of Monte Carlo, and it is also very near to where you will see this next structure, and that's the Cathedral of Monaco, and it is here where Princess Grace and Prince Rainier are buried. So, ladies and gentlemen, we've taken a brief overview. We started out, as we showed you in one of our original slides, that we traveled all the way from the beaches of Normandy down to the waters of the Mediterranean Sea, from the English Channel to the Mediterranean Sea. So you've had a sneak preview of France. We hope you've enjoyed, and we will conclude this by saying that we've had the opportunity to present this to you, and we thank you for your attention. Please Go Away Vacations. If you have questions of any sort, feel free to call us at 800-362-9347, or you can always email us at answers@travelpleasegoaway.com. Thank you very much for your attention and your time.